I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today we're doing a sponsored preview of Warleague. Before we dive into that though, this is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. Warleague is effectively a dungeon crawler slash TTRPG with a whole bunch of different play modes. The primary play mode is going to be that of a dungeon crawler. You're going to be going through a either solo or cooperative adventure, taking control of the characters, going through their specific journey as you engage in a variety of different quests, as well as the story, the choices you make along the way, engaging in various quests along the way past the core missions you're going through. You basically are going through a campaign. That's the primary mode of play, and you can play that solo or cooperatively. We'll dive into a bit more what that looks like shortly. I'll also note, if you do want to see a gameplay on this, I did go through a sample gameplay giving you a bit of a kind of the structure and flow of the campaign. If you want to check that out, I'll have that link down below as well. Outside of that, you can also play through individual scenarios, and you can also play it competitively as well. So there's a lot of ways to engage in this game, but the core structure is going to be that dungeon crawler TTRPG, where you basically have your character, you're going to have your core board over here, your character stats, and you're going to have the gear they start with, as well as the various gear that they pick up and sometimes lose along the way. That's going to be weapons, items, equipment, consumables, things like that, all as you attempt to survive and make choices through the campaign journey. To that end, the basic structure of the game is you're going to start off with the book. You're going to have your character, you're going to have the specific starting point, what's going on, the story. The board will tell you, the book will tell you how to equip your character with various items, and then from there you're going to get your starting assignment of various stats, which will be relevant for various tests you are taking along the way. You might have to test for leadership, or you test for your computers or medical, or different abilities or things you have, and each character does have different combinations of what they're good at, what they're proficient at in the game. From there you dive into the story. That's going to have a healthy dose of narrative that's going to be broken up by diving into the actual encounters in the game. So you have the narrative, you have the story, you dive into an encounter, which is where you'll set up the mission board to whatever encounter you're going through, go through that mission, which we'll come back to shortly, and once that's accomplished, you'll return back to the book. That's going to be interspersed with choices along the way. You'll have times where you make different choices, checking the back of the book to see the outcome, the resolution. Sometimes those will be things that affect your stats. Sometimes they'll give you various items or gear in different ways. They'll have a variety of different outcomes depending on the choices you make with the characters. From there, you'll also dive into the occasional overland exploration. We have over here a moment where you can go ahead and explore into this world over here, diving into a variety of quests as you spend your time efficiently to try to go from point to point and engage with the separate quest book that's going to have you making a whole host of different decisions in a kind of choose your own adventure aspect of this game. So it kind of leans into a more involved version of those choices that you're making in the basic sequence of play. So again, we have our story, we have the choices you're making, you have the quests you can engage with, and then you have the missions you can engage with. That kind of combination of different things is going to what entails a campaign as you go through it. Which I guess brings us to the actual core aspect of things, which is going to be that fighting element as you dive into those various missions. When you dive into a mission, you're going to have your character on the board, you're going to set up various enemies based off the wave you are going through over here. The game does have a variety of difficulty levels, and that's going to affect anything from the various way the enemies hit, how hard they hit, is going to affect how many enemies spawn, and again, you're also going to be balancing that with whether you're playing solo or cooperatively, whether you have extra characters helping you out in the scenario, and that should also affect which level of difficulty you choose to play as. You're going to look over here on, again, the encounter book itself. It's going to tell you how to set things up. You can look through them, the various terrain elements, whether you have pillars or items or bridges. Sometimes you have advanced elements such as moving elevators. You have all these different modes going on. That's all going to be explained on the specific mission you are playing as. From there, you're going to spawn the various enemies, again, based on the difficulty level you're playing as. You'll have the enemy cards, you'll have the various models over here, and then from there, you go through a sequence back and forth of an upkeep, a degree of upkeep phase, going into the hero's turns, and again, this is going to be where we have kind of the basic way the game is going to start, as well as all the various elements you can unlock. There's going to be a variety of things, from traps to spawners to different things like that, to units that you can have activating underneath you, because there's a core structure of the sequence of the play is going to be your hero moves, then the other heroes, then your units, their units. You're going to go through an activation of all the heroes and units that are on your side before you move into the enemy turn, which is where the enemies will activate. the enemies will also activate, going through a sequence of order as they try to spend their own action points in order to close the distance when necessary, as well as to attack you. And again, I say when necessary because the enemies have ranged attacks as well, so you have to try to look at the terrain, figure out what the enemies are going to do, which sometimes is going to be a pre-programmed set of basics as they go through it, and other times you'll have specific behavior cards for enemies that tell you exactly how that enemy activates. So again, at times you're going through a basic move, attack, kill, and all that. Other times you're going through a specific sequence of how that enemy is poised to activate as it tries to, guard or move or get in the way or attack you, because they have that specific activation card telling you their behaviors. So you're going to go through that arc, dealing with various upkeep, dealing with your units, dealing with their units, all while you attempt to take them out. As far as the general structure, each both on your turn and on the enemy's turn, you're going to be dealing with action points. So you have a pool of action points over here. Right now, at the moment, we start with 5 action points at the beginning of the game, but you can unlock different things that will change that. For example, during the course of the game, anger is going to be a resource that as you gain anger, most commonly through defeating enemies, you're going to be bumping up the stat, which will also affect your health as well as the amount of action points you have. Those action points are going to be key for moving around the board, spending extra action points to go ahead and cross difficult terrain, spending your action points to fire off your weapons and rolling dice, and then seeing which level of attack you got, whether you got low, medium, or high, depending on that roll over here. If we got a 6 over here, boom, we're able to do 8 damage, which can be a decent chunk to taking out or completely eliminating an enemy. But far more often, you won't be getting that 5 or 6. Basically, it's broken up into tiers. A 1 or 2, a 3 and a 4, and a 5 or 6 will be the lighter, medium, and heavy attacks that you're able to inflict upon the enemies to deal damage to them. You also have your range attribute, the action cost for that weapon, as well as the weight for the weapon, as you manage your characters a weight limit between their core items as well as between the various extras that they are carrying. So that's going to be kind of your action turn. You have a certain amount of action points. You spend those action points to move around the board, possibly on various consumables or on your core weapons in order to inflict attacks upon the enemy. When you're done spending your action points, it's going to move to the enemy's turn, where they're going to do the exact same, but in reverse and much less to your benefit. Because this is where you have to be on the defensive. This is where the enemies are going to be spending the action points to close the distance when necessary. And again, this will depend on whether they are melee, whether they're ranged. There's also explosive, which is going to be the most damaging, especially because of the way it can kind of avoid things in the way. And so and that's something you can unlock as well, depending on the weapons or gear that you have. So we have melee, ranged, and explosive attacks in the game. But they're going to spend their action points to close the distance to you as necessary, and then to inflict attacks on you, again based off the range value, or if it's melee based on adjacency, and then dealing damage based on the specific difficulty level that you are playing as over here. You're going to repeat that cycle, which is going to lead into eventual spawning of more enemies, because again we have these tiers over here that eventually more enemies are going to be spawning. You have a certain number of turns to deal with them before the next wave spawns, and then past that there's going to be a whole bunch of other things that happen as you go through these scenarios. Exits are going to open, giving you the opportunity to escape for the first time. Events will happen, making your job significantly more difficult, and there's also going to be challenges that give you additional ways or complexities to what you're trying to do, but for additional rewards as you do so. That's the core arc of what the gameplay of this game looks like. And so again, to kind of give you a general recap of what Warleague is doing, Warleague is at its core a dungeon crawler TTRPG with a variety of game modes. The core action sequence is going to have you spending action points to be able to utilize various things, while the enemies then take turns spending their action points to try to attack you and spend action points on attack, on movement. You're going to go back and forth in that cycle, paying attention to the actual arc over here. There's also additional things for difficulty modes, where depending on the difficulty mode, you might not actually see what's coming as you go through this, forcing you to plan reactively as opposed to being able to plan in advance. And you're going through this back and forth arc until eventually you are able to complete the specific mission you are doing, or until you are unfortunately and hopefully not taken out by the enemies. Along the way, you're going through the sequence of your actual campaign, if you are playing it through the actual campaign mode, the progression, whether you're playing it solo or cooperatively, making choices, decisions, going on various quests, and engaging in the missions. Outside of that, there's also going to be that competitive mode to dive into a bit more of a skirmish if you want to engage in what Warleague is doing as a skirmish game as opposed to the cooperative solo adventure that it otherwise is. That is basically Warleague. We'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. And again, reminder, this is a prototype, all rules and component subjects change. And until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.